She didn't believe in exclusive relationships and wanted to keep her options open while still dating me. I found this out while planning our anniversary trip to Napa Valley, complete with private tastings and hot air balloon rides. I had been thinking about proposing during that getaway, but her revelation changed everything completely. I'm Drew, 28, working as a database administrator in Portland, making decent money maintaining servers and optimizing queries for a mid-sized tech company. Paige was 26, running influencer marketing campaigns for boutique hotels, constantly posting perfectly curated content that made every mundane moment look like a lifestyle magazine spread. We met 18 months ago at our mutual friend Marcus's board game night, bonding over vintage vinyl records and weekend farmers market visits where we'd hunt for rare pressing and organic produce like some millennial power couple from a Portland tourism commercial. Those early days felt genuine, lazy Sunday mornings playing obscure indie albums while she edited hotel photos and I worked on side coding projects, both of us content in comfortable silence broken only by the occasional shared observation about whatever musician we were discovering together. We moved in together after 6 months, which felt natural and right at the time, though looking back I realize I was probably more invested in building something permanent than she ever was. The first sign something was off came about 3 months into living together when I noticed Paige's constant social media activity included liking and commenting on her ex-boyfriend's shirtless gym photos with fire emojis and comments like, "looking good," followed by multiple heart eyes emojis. When I mentioned feeling uncomfortable about her digital interactions with multiple ex-partners, she immediately accused me of being insecure and controlling, launching into a lecture about how modern relationships required complete freedom to maintain past connections online without jealous partners imposing outdated restrictions. She made it sound like I was some kind of possessive dinosaur who didn't understand that commenting on ex-boyfriends' thirst traps was just normal friendship behavior, as if liking photos of her former lovers flexing in gym mirrors was equivalent to commenting on a coworker's vacation pictures. The conversations always ended the same way, with me feeling like I was being unreasonable for having basic boundaries about appropriate behavior in committed relationships, while she maintained that any discomfort I felt was my problem to solve through personal growth and therapy. I started second-guessing myself, wondering if I was actually being controlling or if this was just how relationships worked in the social media age where everyone stayed connected to everyone they'd ever dated through carefully curated online personas and strategic emoji usage. The pattern became exhausting. I'd notice something that bothered me, bring it up gently, and immediately get lectured about trust and modern relationship dynamics while being made to feel like some kind of insecure relic who didn't understand that maintaining flirtatious contact with exes was perfectly normal behavior for emotionally evolved adults. Meanwhile, Paige spent hours every evening scrolling through Instagram, liking photos and leaving comments on posts from guys she dated, responding to their stories with inside jokes and references to shared memories that I wasn't part of and would never understand. She'd laugh at her phone constantly, showing me funny memes or cute animal videos while conveniently not mentioning that half her entertainment came from ongoing conversations with former romantic interests who clearly hadn't gotten the memo that she was supposedly committed to someone else now. I'd watch her thumb move across her screen with practiced precision, dispensing hearts and fire emojis to carefully selected posts from an extensive roster of past lovers, each interaction brief enough to seem innocent but frequent enough to maintain whatever connection she was preserving with these men who'd once shared her bed and apparently still occupied space in her daily thoughts. The whole situation made me feel like I was competing for attention with a digital harem of exes who got to stay relevant in her life through strategic social media engagement, while I sat next to her on our couch watching her invest emotional energy in maintaining multiple relationships that she claimed were purely platonic but sure didn't feel that way from my perspective. When I tried to explain that most people in committed relationships didn't spend their evenings flirting with exes online, she'd roll her eyes and launch into another speech about how I needed to work on my trust issues and embrace a more mature understanding of what healthy relationships looked like in the modern world where staying friends with former partners was a sign of emotional intelligence rather than a red flag that should concern any reasonable person who expected basic loyalty from their romantic partner. I decided to surprise Paige by planning an elaborate week-long trip to Napa Valley wine country, complete with private tastings and a hot air balloon ride, after she mentioned wanting to celebrate our upcoming 2-year anniversary in style with something romantic and memorable that would give her amazing content for her Instagram feed. I spent weeks researching boutique wineries, booking exclusive experiences, and coordinating every detail to create the perfect romantic getaway that would show her how much I valued our relationship and wanted to build something lasting together. I'd been thinking about proposing during that trip, maybe during the hot air balloon ride at sunrise or over dinner at one of those intimate vineyard restaurants overlooking the rolling hills, somewhere picturesque enough to become the backdrop for the engagement photos she'd probably post immediately after saying yes. The reservations were expensive but worth it for someone I thought I'd be spending my life with, and I was genuinely excited about surprising her with the level of planning and thought I'd put into making our anniversary special. That's when she dropped the bomb that completely changed everything about our relationship and made me realize I'd been building a future with someone who had completely different ideas about what commitment meant. During one of our regular evening conversations about weekend plans, Paige casually announced that she didn't believe in exclusive relationships and wanted to keep her options open while still dating me, explaining this like it was a perfectly reasonable relationship arrangement that mature adults should be able to navigate without drama or jealousy. She told me that commitment felt restrictive and limiting, that she needed the freedom to explore connections with other people, including her ex-boyfriends who regularly slid into her DMs with invitations to grab coffee or catch up over drinks, opportunities she didn't want to pass up just because she happened to be living with someone who expected monogamy. The way she explained it made it sound like I was being unreasonable for expecting basic exclusivity, as if wanting a committed relationship was some kind of outdated concept that emotionally intelligent people had evolved beyond in favor of more enlightened arrangements where everyone got to sample whatever romantic opportunities presented themselves without being held back by possessive partners who couldn't handle sharing. I listened to her whole speech about modern love and personal freedom while processing the fact that she was essentially asking me to subsidize her lifestyle and provide emotional support while she shopped around for better options, treating our relationship like a comfortable home base she could return to between adventures with more exciting prospects who caught her attention on social media platforms where she maintained an active presence in multiple men's lives. The irony wasn't lost on me that she was making this declaration while sitting in the apartment I paid most of the rent for, wearing the expensive skincare products I'd bought her last week, planning to spend our upcoming anniversary in wine country using reservations I'd already paid for in full because I thought we were building something exclusive and meaningful together. I realized that while I'd been planning a romantic getaway with potential proposal scenarios, she'd been mentally preparing to turn our relationship into some kind of open arrangement where she got all the benefits of having a devoted boyfriend without any of the commitment or loyalty that typically came with that designation. Her timing was particularly interesting, waiting until after I'd invested significant money in anniversary plans to inform me that she didn't actually believe in the kind of relationship I thought we'd been building for the past 18 months of shared experiences and intimate moments that apparently meant less to her than the opportunity to keep her options open with various men from her past who stayed relevant through strategic social media interactions. I calmly responded that her honesty was refreshing and that I respected her choice to prioritize personal freedom over commitment, thanking her for being upfront about her relationship philosophy before we'd gotten even more serious or made any major life decisions based on the assumption that we were working toward the same goals. The look on her face when I agreed with her was priceless. She'd clearly expected me to fight for exclusive rights to her time and attention, to argue about why she should choose monogamy, to compete with her ex-boyfriends for the privilege of being her primary romantic focus while accepting that I'd never be her only one. Instead, I told her that I respected her right to live according to her values and that I hoped she found exactly what she was looking for in life, whether that was with me under her preferred non-exclusive arrangement or with someone else who shared her modern approach to relationships where commitment was optional and boundaries were suggestions rather than actual relationship requirements. I immediately began making other arrangements for the expensive vacation I'd already booked, realizing that I'd rather spend that money on someone who actually wanted to be with me exclusively than waste it on a romantic getaway with someone who saw our relationship as just one option among many she wanted to keep available for her convenience and entertainment. The whole conversation left me feeling like I'd been living in a completely different relationship than she had, While I'd been building toward a future together, she'd been maintaining a carefully curated collection of romantic possibilities that she wanted to keep available without having to sacrifice the comfort and security of having someone reliable like me as her primary emotional and financial support system. Within hours of our conversation about non-exclusive relationships, I discovered that Paige had been secretly meeting up with her ex-boyfriend Marcus for coffee dates that she documented extensively on her private Instagram story, posting photos of their intimate conversations over lattes with captions like, "catching up with old friends," and heart emojis that suggested these weren't exactly platonic reunions between former lovers who had genuinely moved on from their romantic past. I found out about these secret meetings when I accidentally saw her phone screen while she was showing me what she claimed was a funny meme, but instead caught a glimpse of a story post featuring Marcus's hands reaching across a cafe table to touch hers while they shared some kind of inside joke that made her laugh in a way I hadn't seen in months of our supposedly committed relationship. The realization hit me that her declaration about wanting non-exclusive arrangements wasn't some philosophical stance about modern love, it was retroactive justification for emotional cheating that had been happening for months while I'd been completely oblivious to the fact that she was essentially dating multiple people simultaneously while letting me believe we were building something exclusive and meaningful together. I started paying closer attention to her social media activity and discovered an entire parallel relationship playing out through carefully timed likes, comments, and direct messages with Marcus, who had apparently never really accepted that their relationship was over and had been slowly working his way back into her life through strategic digital reconnection that escalated into real-world meetups she'd been hiding from me with increasing sophistication and deception. Her best friend Willow had been encouraging these meetups, claiming that Paige deserved to have multiple romantic options since she was too young to settle down with someone like me who worked a boring office job and didn't provide the kind of excitement and adventure that someone with her social media following clearly needed to maintain her carefully crafted online persona as a free-spirited influencer who couldn't be tied down by conventional relationship expectations. I realized that Willow had been actively undermining our relationship for months, feeding Paige advice about keeping her options open and encouraging her to reconnect with past lovers who might offer better opportunities for the kind of lifestyle content that generated engagement from her followers who expected constant updates about her romantic adventures and wouldn't be satisfied with boring posts about domestic stability with a database administrator who preferred quiet nights at home over photogenic dinner dates at trendy restaurants. When I confronted Paige about the secret meetings with Marcus, she immediately became defensive and accused me of stalking her social media, claiming that I was violating her privacy by paying attention to content she posted on platforms where I was supposedly allowed to follow her but apparently not allowed to actually notice what she was sharing with her carefully curated audience of admirers and potential romantic prospects. The gaslighting was immediate and intense. Suddenly I was the problem for discovering her deception, rather than her being accountable for the months of lies and secret meetings that had been happening while she enjoyed the benefits of having a stable relationship with me as her home base. Willow chimed in via text message, calling me possessive and outdated for expecting basic honesty from someone I'd been living with for over a year, lecturing me about how evolved people understand that maintaining connections with former lovers is perfectly healthy and that my discomfort with secret coffee dates was evidence of deep insecurity that I needed to address through therapy rather than by imposing unrealistic expectations on a free spirit like Paige who deserved better than a controlling partner who couldn't handle her independent lifestyle. The text messages from Willow were particularly infuriating because she'd been actively encouraging Paige's deceptive behavior while positioning herself as some kind of relationship expert who understood modern love better than someone like me who apparently represented everything wrong with traditional masculine expectations in contemporary dating culture. I learned that Willow had been coaching Paige on how to maintain multiple romantic connections without technically cheating, providing advice on strategic social media posting, timing of secret meetups, and techniques for compartmentalizing different relationships so she could enjoy the emotional and physical benefits of dating multiple people simultaneously without having to deal with the complications that typically arise when someone tries to have their cake and eat it too in terms of romantic relationships. The whole situation became clear Paige hadn't suddenly developed a philosophy about non-exclusive relationships. She'd been caught in a web of lies and was trying to reframe her behavior as some kind of enlightened approach to modern love rather than acknowledging that she'd been systematically deceiving someone who'd been completely faithful and committed to building something real with her. Willow's involvement made everything worse because she'd been validating Paige's worst impulses while encouraging her to see my reasonable expectations for honesty and loyalty as character flaws that held her back from living her best life as an independent woman who shouldn't have to sacrifice romantic opportunities just because she happened to be cohabitating with someone who expected basic respect and transparency from his romantic partner. I realized that confronting Paige about Marcus was pointless because she'd already constructed an entire justification system with Willow's help that painted me as the villain for discovering their secret relationship and expecting accountability for months of calculated deception that had been happening right under my nose while I'd been completely trusting and supportive of what I thought was our committed partnership. The whole dynamic revealed that I'd been living with someone who saw our relationship as optional while treating her connection with Marcus as exciting and worth risking everything for, someone who valued the thrill of secret meetings and forbidden romance more than the security and stability of building something lasting with someone who actually prioritized her well-being and happiness above his own convenience and entertainment. I ended the relationship that same evening, telling Paige she was free to pursue whatever connections she wanted without me as a backup option or safety net while she explored more exciting possibilities with Marcus and whoever else caught her attention on social media platforms where she maintained an active romantic presence that I'd been naive enough to interpret as normal friendship behavior. The conversation was surprisingly brief and civil. I simply explained that her vision of relationships didn't align with mine, that I respected her right to live according to her values, but that I wouldn't be participating in any arrangement where I was expected to provide emotional and financial stability while she dated other people openly and maintained secret relationships that violated the basic trust one thought we'd established over 18 months of what I'd mistakenly believed was exclusive partnership. I had already been casually chatting with Iris, a museum curator I'd met through a work networking event who appreciated my thoughtful nature and shared my interest in authentic relationships over social media performance and digital validation from multiple romantic prospects who provided constant entertainment but no real substance or commitment to building anything meaningful together. Iris was refreshingly different from Paige. She had genuine intellectual curiosity about art and history, maintained professional boundaries with colleagues and former romantic partners, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me as a person rather than evaluating me as one option among many potential partners she wanted to keep available for her convenience. The next morning, I changed the vacation reservation from a couple's retreat to a romantic getaway for me and Iris, who was thrilled by the spontaneous invitation to Napa Valley and excited about the prospect of exploring wine country with someone who actually wanted to share those experiences exclusively rather than treating them as content opportunities for social media posts designed to make ex-boyfriends jealous and maintain multiple romantic connections simultaneously. Paige discovered the change when she tried to access the booking confirmation email, probably planning to post teaser content about our upcoming anniversary trip, only to realize that I had already blocked her across all social platforms while she was out with Marcus enjoying another one of their secret coffee dates that she'd been documenting extensively for her private story audience. The shock on her face when she realized I'd actually followed through on ending our relationship was priceless. She'd clearly expected me to fight for her attention, to compete with Marcus for the privilege of being her primary romantic focus, to accept whatever arrangement she offered rather than walking away from someone who looked like her and maintain the kind of social media presence that made other guys envious of whoever got to date her. Instead, she found herself suddenly single and blocked from all my accounts while I was already making plans with someone who actually wanted to be with me exclusively, someone who didn't need to maintain a roster of backup options or document every interaction for social media validation from an audience of former lovers and potential romantic prospects. The complete reversal of power dynamics was fascinating to watch. Suddenly Paige was the one being abandoned rather than doing the abandoning, discovering that her assumption about my desperate need for her attention was completely wrong and that I was perfectly capable of walking away from someone who treated our relationship like an optional convenience rather than a priority worth protecting and nurturing through honest communication and mutual respect. She tried calling and texting from different numbers after realizing she'd been blocked everywhere, leaving increasingly frantic messages about how we could work things out and find some compromise that honored both our needs. But I'd already moved on mentally and emotionally to planning adventures with someone who shared my values about loyalty and commitment rather than viewing those qualities as outdated restrictions that held back free spirits from living their best lives. The irony wasn't lost on me that Paige had spent months complaining about feeling trapped and restricted by my expectations for basic honesty, only to discover that losing those restrictions meant losing me entirely, along with the stability and security she'd been taking for granted while pursuing exciting romantic alternatives that suddenly seemed a lot less appealing when they became her only options instead of thrilling secret additions to an otherwise secure relationship foundation. Drew and Iris shared stunning photos from Napa Valley across their social media accounts, showing intimate vineyard dinners and sunrise balloon rides that Paige had specifically requested for our anniversary celebration, experiences she'd been planning to document extensively for her followers who expected constant updates about her romantic adventures with whoever happened to be funding her lifestyle at any given moment. I made sure to post strategically timed content that highlighted the genuine happiness and connection Iris and I were building together, showing her laughing at wine tastings and looking genuinely relaxed during our hot air balloon ride over the valley floor, creating the kind of authentic romantic content that Paige had always struggled to produce despite her extensive experience with social media manipulation and carefully staged relationship posts. The contrast was striking, where Paige's posts always felt performative and designed to generate envy or validation from her audience of ex-boyfriends and potential romantic prospects. The photos with Iris captured real moments of joy and connection that didn't need artificial enhancement or strategic timing to create impact among people who actually mattered in our lives. Paige's followers began asking why she wasn't on the trip she had been promoting for weeks through subtle hints and teaser posts about upcoming anniversary celebrations, forcing her to admit publicly that our relationship had ended while simultaneously trying to maintain her image as someone who was too desirable and independent to be tied down by conventional relationship expectations that clearly hadn't worked out in her favor. Meanwhile, her situationship with Marcus quickly fizzled when he realized she was using him as a rebound and backup plan rather than pursuing genuine romantic interest in building something exclusive and meaningful with someone who had genuinely cared about her well-being and happiness during their previous relationship years earlier. Marcus had apparently been enjoying the attention and ego boost of winning Paige back from her stable relationship with me, but once he achieved that goal and realized he was expected to provide the same level of emotional and financial support I'd been offering, his enthusiasm for their reconnection disappeared faster than her interest in maintaining professional boundaries with former romantic partners. Paige began posting increasingly desperate content about missing real connections and authentic relationships, while simultaneously trying to recreate the Napa Valley experience with random dating app matches who had no intention of funding expensive wine country getaways for someone they just met through superficial online interactions that prioritized physical attraction over genuine compatibility and shared values. Her Instagram stories became a public documentation of failed dates and disappointing encounters with men who were interested in casual hookups but had no desire to invest in building anything substantial with someone whose social media presence advertised her availability and willingness to maintain multiple romantic connections simultaneously without commitment or loyalty to any particular partner. The desperation in her content became increasingly obvious as she posted photos from expensive restaurants with different men each week, trying to recreate the romantic experiences she'd lost when I walked away, but the forced smiles and awkward body language in these photos revealed that none of these encounters were providing the genuine connection and security she'd been taking for granted during our relationship. I watched from a distance as her follower count started declining because her content had devolved from aspirational lifestyle posts into a messy documentary of modern dating disasters, complete with passive-aggressive captions about men who couldn't handle strong independent women and weren't mature enough to appreciate what real love looked like when it was offered to them freely. The irony was perfect. Paige had destroyed a stable relationship with someone who genuinely cared about her in favor of maintaining multiple superficial connections that provided ego validation but no real substance. only to discover that those surface-level interactions couldn't replace the deep emotional intimacy and security she'd been rejecting as too restrictive for someone with her free-spirited personality and social media influence. Her attempts to recreate our Napa Valley anniversary became particularly pathetic as she posted photos from budget wine bars and local vineyards with various dating app matches, trying to manufacture the same romantic atmosphere Iris and I had experienced during our spontaneous getaway. But the stark difference in quality and authenticity was obvious to anyone who compared our genuine happiness with her increasingly desperate attempts to prove she was living her best life without the stability and commitment she'd rejected. The comments on her posts shifted from envious admiration to concerned questions about her well-being as friends and followers began noticing the pattern of short-lived relationships and increasingly erratic behavior that suggested someone who was struggling to maintain the confident, independent woman persona she'd cultivated while secretly missing the security and genuine affection she'd abandoned in favor of keeping her romantic options open. Willow eventually distanced herself from the chaos as her own relationship prospects suffered from association with Paige's dramatic dating life and public emotional meltdowns, leaving Paige isolated from the support system that had encouraged her to prioritize personal freedom over building something meaningful with someone who actually valued her enough to plan romantic gestures and invest in creating shared experiences that didn't require social media documentation to feel worthwhile and significant. 3 months later, Paige's social media presence devolved into bitter posts about men who couldn't handle strong, independent women and constant complaints about modern dating culture being full of commitment-phobic guys who only wanted casual hookups instead of appreciating someone who brought real value to relationships through her social media influence and carefully curated lifestyle content that should have attracted high-quality partners willing to invest in her happiness and success. Her friend Willow distanced herself when Paige's constant relationship drama and emotional instability began affecting her own dating prospects, as potential partners in their shared social circles started viewing association with Paige as a red flag that suggested similar patterns of manipulation and boundary violations that made serious relationships impossible to maintain long-term. The abandonment by her primary enabler left Paige increasingly isolated from the support system that had validated her worst impulses and encouraged her to treat relationships like optional arrangements where she deserved unlimited freedom without reciprocal loyalty or commitment from partners who were expected to provide stability while she explored more exciting options with former lovers and social media connections. Drew and Iris announced their official relationship status with a simple, elegant photo from an art gallery opening, showing genuine happiness and intellectual connection without any of the performative elements that had characterized Paige's social media presence during our relationship when every moment together had been evaluated for its potential to generate engagement and envy from her audience of admirers and romantic prospects. The contrast between our authentic partnership and Paige's increasingly desperate attempts to find someone willing to fund her lifestyle while tolerating her need to maintain multiple romantic connections was stark and obvious to anyone paying attention to the trajectory of our respective post-breakup experiences. Paige attempted to crash the gallery event but was escorted out by security after creating a public scene that her former mutual friends witnessed and documented, further damaging her social reputation and confirming everyone's suspicions that her claims about being a strong, independent woman were actually cover for someone who couldn't handle being genuinely alone or building authentic connections that didn't revolve around social media validation and financial support from partners she viewed as temporary conveniences rather than human beings deserving of basic respect and honesty. The gallery incident became the final straw for most people in our shared social circle who had been giving Paige the benefit of the doubt about her relationship patterns and emotional stability, as witnessing her public meltdown and desperate attempt to disrupt my new relationship confirmed that her previous behavior hadn't been about personal freedom or modern relationship values but rather about someone who lacked the emotional maturity to handle adult relationships with appropriate boundaries and mutual respect. The videos and photos from that night circulated quickly through social media, showing Paige being physically removed from the gallery while screaming about how I had stolen her anniversary plans and given them to someone else, revealing the depth of her entitlement and complete inability to accept responsibility for the choices that had led to our relationship ending and my decision to move forward with someone who actually wanted to build something exclusive and meaningful together. Her former friends began sharing stories about similar incidents and patterns of behavior they'd witnessed over the years, painting a picture of someone who consistently prioritized her own immediate gratification over the well-being of people who cared about her, someone who had been enabled by a social circle that mistook her selfishness for confidence and her manipulation for independence. The public humiliation of being escorted out of an art gallery for harassing her ex-boyfriend and his new partner became a defining moment that crystallized everyone's understanding of who Paige really was beneath the carefully curated social media persona she'd been maintaining while destroying relationships and burning bridges with anyone who expected basic decency and accountability from someone they'd invested time and energy in trying to love and support. 6 months later, Drew and Iris moved in together after a natural relationship progression built on mutual respect and genuine compatibility rather than social media validation and the constant need for external approval from former romantic partners who provided entertainment but no real substance or commitment to building anything meaningful that could withstand the normal challenges of adult relationships. Paige continued her pattern of non-exclusive dating but found that her reputation for emotional instability and boundary violations preceded her in Portland's interconnected dating scene, where stories about her public meltdown at the gallery and history of treating partners like financial support systems while maintaining secret relationships with multiple men had become common knowledge among anyone worth dating seriously. Her attempts to rebuild her image through strategic social media posting and carefully crafted content about personal growth and learning from past mistakes fell flat because her behavior patterns remained unchanged, and potential partners could see through the superficial self-awareness posts to the underlying entitlement and inability to take genuine accountability for the damage she'd caused in previous relationships. She made several attempts to contact Drew through fake social media accounts and mutual friends, claiming she had learned from her mistakes and wanted to apologize for her behavior, but these messages always included subtle hints about wanting another chance or suggestions that she now understood what real love looked like after experiencing the disappointment of casual dating culture where men didn't appreciate her unique value as a partner. Drew and Iris maintained their privacy settings and blocked all contact attempts while building something authentic together, sharing experiences and creating memories that didn't require documentation for social media audiences or validation from people who had no real investment in their happiness and success as a couple. Paige's Instagram stories became a public documentation of her regret and failed attempts to recreate the authentic connection she had destroyed through her selfishness and inability to commit to someone who had genuinely cared about her well-being and been willing to invest in building a future together based on mutual respect rather than the superficial attractions and temporary excitement she had prioritized over stability and genuine intimacy. The contrast between Drew's thriving relationship with someone who valued exclusivity and commitment versus Paige's continued struggles with finding anyone willing to tolerate her need for multiple romantic options became a cautionary tale in their social circle about the long-term consequences of treating relationships like optional arrangements where partners were expected to provide benefits without receiving basic loyalty and honesty in return. Her dating profile views and match rates declined significantly as word spread about her history of emotional manipulation and financial dependency on partners she viewed as temporary safety nets while pursuing more exciting opportunities with ex-boyfriends and social media connections who provided validation but no real substance or long-term potential for building anything meaningful together. The few men who did match with her quickly discovered the exhausting reality of dating someone who required constant reassurance and financial support while simultaneously maintaining active romantic communications with multiple former partners she claimed were just friends but clearly represented ongoing emotional investments that prevented her from forming genuine exclusive bonds with anyone new. Meanwhile, Drew and Iris celebrated their first anniversary with a quiet weekend getaway to the Oregon coast, posting minimal social media content because their relationship satisfaction came from shared experiences rather than external validation from audiences who had no real investment in their happiness or success as a couple committed to building something lasting together. The irony was perfect. Paige had destroyed a stable relationship with someone who genuinely loved her in favor of maintaining superficial connections that provided temporary excitement but no real emotional security or growth, only to discover that her reputation for treating partners poorly had made her essentially undateable among anyone worth having a serious relationship with in a city where social circles overlapped and stories traveled quickly through interconnected communities of young professionals who valued authenticity over social media performance. Her final attempts to reconnect with Drew through increasingly desperate messages revealed someone who had finally realized what she'd lost but lacked the emotional maturity to accept that some mistakes have permanent consequences and that genuine love can't be restored through apologies that come only after experiencing the natural results of selfish choices and manipulative behavior patterns that destroyed trust beyond any possibility of repair or redemption.